Welcome, my friend. I'm so glad you came. Let's share a calm and quiet moment together before we begin. Today, we will follow the life of a man who entered some of the darkest places a human being can know. Yet, he returned with stories filled with truth, kindness, and hope. His journey will take us into the hidden corners of the human heart. It was a freezing morning in St. Petersburg. Snow covered the ground, and soldiers stood silently with guns in their hands. A group of prisoners waited in the cold. 3 men were tied to wooden posts. Another young man stood nearby, knowing his turn would come next. He believed he had only a few minutes left to live. He looked at the pale sky and suddenly understood how precious every breath was. Then, just before the soldiers fired, a messenger appeared. His name was Fyodor Dostoevsky. He would become one of the greatest writers in history, exploring guilt, suffering, faith, and hope. But how did a man standing so close to death find the strength to understand the human heart? There was one cruel truth about that morning he did not yet know. I will share it with you near the end of our story. Fyodor Dostoevsky was born in Moscow in 1821. His father worked as a doctor at a hospital for poor people, and the family lived nearby. As a child, Fyodor often saw sick, tired, and lonely people passing through the hospital grounds. Their faces stayed in his memory. He began to notice the quiet pain hidden inside ordinary lives. Years later, many of his stories would return to people like them. The poor, the forgotten, and those searching for kindness in a difficult world. Books soon became Fyodor's quiet escape. He listened to old stories, Russian legends, and lessons from the Bible. Each story opened a new world inside his mind. Through reading, he discovered courage, fear, kindness, and sorrow. The people he saw outside the hospital gave him real human faces, while books helped him understand the feelings hidden behind them. Now, my friend, when Fyodor was still young, his mother died. Her loss left a deep sadness in the family. Soon after, he was sent to a military engineering school in St. Petersburg. The school was strict, and the work was difficult. Fyodor learned mathematics, drawing, and military design, but his heart was somewhere else. While other students studied machines and buildings, he spent his free time reading stories. Engineering promised him a safe future, but literature made him feel truly alive. After finishing school, Fyodor worked as a military engineer for a short time. The job gave him security, but it did not give him joy. His mind remained filled with characters, emotions, and unfinished stories. At last, he made a brave choice. He left his safe career behind and decided to become a writer, even though success was far from certain. Fyodor began working on his first novel, Poor Folk. It told the story of ordinary people living with poverty, loneliness, and quiet dignity. When the book was published in 1846, readers and writers quickly noticed his talent. For the first time, the unknown young man felt that his dream was becoming real. Doors opened, important people praised him, and St. Petersburg began to speak his name. But success came suddenly, and it would not protect him from the difficult years waiting ahead. But the praise did not last. Fyodor's next books received colder reactions, and some critics became harsh. The young writer felt hurt and alone. He had tasted success, but now it seemed to be slipping away. Doubt entered his mind, and the bright future he had imagined began to darken. Soon, a far greater danger would enter his life. During this lonely time, Fyodor joined a small group of thinkers in St. Petersburg. They met quietly to read forbidden books and discuss freedom, poverty, and serfdom, a system that kept poor farmers under the control of rich landowners. They were not soldiers, and they carried no weapons. They only shared ideas and hoped Russia could become fairer. But in those days, even a private conversation could be dangerous. The government was watching them, and one night, Fyodor's life changed forever. Fyodor was arrested and taken to the Peter and Paul fortress. For months, he waited inside a cold, silent cell, unsure of what would happen next. The walls were thick, the days were slow, and no clear answer came. He did not know whether he would return home, remain in prison, or lose his life. Then, one morning, the guards opened his door. Fyodor and the other prisoners were taken to a snowy square where their death sentences were read aloud. Some men kissed a cross. Others stood in silence. Fyodor believed he had only a few minutes left. In his mind, he divided that small amount of time. A moment to remember the people he loved, a moment to say goodbye, and one final moment to look at the world. Then the soldiers raised their guns. Before the order came, a messenger suddenly appeared. Their lives would be spared. His life was spared, but freedom did not return. Fyodor was sent to Siberia for 4 years of hard labor. He lived in a crowded prison, wore heavy chains, and worked through bitter winters. After that, he was forced to serve in the army. The man who had once dreamed of literary success now faced a world of cold, pain, and silence. Inside the prison, Fyodor lived beside men who had committed serious crimes. At first, he saw only danger and anger, but slowly he began to notice something more. These prisoners also carried memories, love, regret, and quiet kindness. Some shared food. Others helped a sick man or spoke gently about home. Fyodor understood that a person could hold darkness and goodness in the same heart. Years later, these painful experiences would shape his book, The House of the Dead. The man who left Siberia was not the same man who had entered it. Prison had changed the way Fyodor saw life, faith, and suffering. He understood that people were rarely only good or only bad. Even in the darkest heart, there could still be regret, love, and hope. This understanding would later become the soul of his greatest stories. If this quiet journey is helping you understand English more naturally, please subscribe and continue the story with us. After years of exile, Fyodor slowly returned to ordinary life. He married Maria Isaeva, but their years together were often difficult and shadowed by illness. In 1864, Marita died. Only a few months later, Fyodor also lost his beloved brother, Mikhail. Grief came from 2 directions, while debts and family responsibilities continued to grow. He had survived prison in Siberia, but now he faced another kind of suffering, the quiet pain of losing the people closest to him. During his travels in Europe, Fyodor became trapped by gambling. He entered casinos hoping to win enough money to pay his debts, but he often lost even more. Letters from creditors followed him, and deadlines grew closer. He had to write quickly, sometimes under great pressure. The man who understood human weakness so deeply could not always control his own. In 1866, Fyodor published Crime and Punishment. It followed a poor student who commits a terrible crime and then begins to suffer inside his own mind. Fear, guilt, and loneliness become a punishment of their own. Through this story, Fyodor asked a difficult question. Can a person return to goodness after crossing a moral line? The answer was not simple, but hope remained. Later that same year, Fyodor faced another dangerous deadline. He had to complete a short novel called The Gambler, so he hired Anna Snitkina, a young woman trained to write down spoken words very quickly. Anna was calm, practical, and patient. She saw both his talent and his struggles without judging him. Their working relationship slowly became something deeper, and they married in 1867. With Anna beside him, Fyodor finally began to find greater stability in his writing and personal life. Each new novel opened another door into the human heart, revealing a different fear, struggle, or hope. In The Idiot, he wondered whether a truly kind person could survive in a cruel world. In Demons, he explored radical ideas, beliefs so extreme that they can control people and lead them toward violence. In The Brothers Karamazov, he wrote about family, faith, doubt, and responsibility. These books were not simply stories. They were journeys into the human mind, asking why we suffer, why we hurt others, and whether love can still save us. In his final years, Fyodor completed The Brothers Karamazov, one of his greatest works. He wrote it in St. Petersburg, near places connected to his early life as a young writer. After prison, exile, illness, debt, and loss, he had returned to the city where his dream began. His life had moved in a wide circle, but the man who returned carried a much deeper understanding of human nature. Earlier, I promised to share the cruel truth about the morning Fyodor believed he would die. The pardon had already been prepared before the prisoners reached the square. The soldiers, the wooden posts, and the raised guns were all part of a planned punishment. Fyodor and the others were made to believe their final moment had come before they were told they could live. He survived, but the memory never left him. From that day forward, every minute of life seemed more precious. Fyodor Dostoevsky died in St. Petersburg in 1881. He was 59 years old. In his final room, he was surrounded by books, handwritten pages, and memories from a long and difficult life. More than 30 years had passed since the morning he believed he would die before a firing squad. His life had been filled with suffering, but he had used that suffering to create stories that still speak to people today. Why does Dostoevsky still matter today? Because the questions inside his books are still alive. Why do good people sometimes make terrible choices? Can guilt change a person? Can love bring someone back from darkness? Dostoevsky did not offer simple answers. Instead, he showed how fear, pride, pain, faith, and hope can live together inside one human heart. His stories remain powerful because they do not judge people from a distance. They ask us to look deeper and perhaps understand ourselves a little better. Dostoevsky did not write about darkness because he had lost hope. He entered that darkness to search for a small light still living inside people. His life reminds us that suffering can change us, but it does not have to destroy us. Even after fear, failure, and loss, a human heart may still choose truth, kindness, and hope. Thank you for sharing this quiet journey with me. If Dostoevsky's story stayed in your heart, please like this video and subscribe for more slow English stories from history. And tell me in the comments, which part of Dostoevsky's life stayed with you most? The firing squad, his years in Siberia, or his struggle with gambling? Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and remember that even in dark moments, hope can still remain.